any consensus on this, but I thought that might be a good way for us to move forward on this. I'm open to any other ideas that anybody has.
Just from every other web portal I've ever seen, or every survey tool, or so many that, you know, involved in whether it be emergency management across the state or KDM or anything else, that's about the most effective way to do it. That way you keep that consistent manner of collecting information.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about, I mentioned the need assessment this morning. I think we will need to do that in a certain aspect, but I just don't think we do it in two different steps. I think we do it all in one step, because it would just take too much time. You know, if we try to do a needs assessment, then we're wasting, what, 2 weeks or something while people do that. So if we just kind of, I think we can evaluate the needs as we're reading their proposals or their requests. But go ahead.
What's the deadline for distributing the funds?
Well, they have to be, what was it, incurred by October, or they have to go back.
By October? Okay.
Yes.
This phase one, this.
Well, the phase one, yes.
Yes, and that's the 36 million that has to be done and distributed out to, okay.
Yes.
By when? December 30th?
Well, everything on this has to be spent by December 30th. Everything on this CARES Act money.
Okay.
But
that included all the phases.
But this round one money, the Sparks, the state's Spark task force is saying anything that isn't incurred by October has to go back to them. And I don't know if I think we had an October 1. It says October 1 is the redistribution. So they would have to get back before that. The plans are due September 15th, or that's the guidance I have right now. So we've got to move pretty quickly. And one of the things, so anyway, I guess let's have discussion on how we're going to go about this.
So to make sure that I'm correct, and kind of along with Joni's question, is we have from now till September 15th to submit our plans. I mean, our plan on how we want to distribute that money.
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding right now. As we get more guidance, I'll let you know, but that's how I understand it right now.
Submit the plan, not necessarily disperse the money.
Correct.
Right.
And so does the plan then have to go through an approval process through the state that then we have to then implement, or?
I don't know.
We don't know.
I'm waiting for guidance from the state, but, and I don't also, you know, it's also that 50% is reimbursement, 50% is direct aid. Do you have to document what that direct aid is covered, you know, going to pay for? I just don't know details.
Correct.
Okay. Betty.
Yeah.
This is Larry Ma. I was trying to figure out what they meant by reimbursement versus direct aid. Is reimbursement these things you've already spent, and direct aid would be things you're anticipating on spending?
I don't know.
Future
Potentially. I just don't know until we get some guidance from them.
Yeah, I couldn't figure out what direct aid was. But go ahead.
Have they indicated when they anticipate guidance will come out? Any day?
Yeah, 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. I guess, like, for me, that's what, like, all of these questions kind of, I feel like it's hard to exactly say how we want to go about doing a plan or implementing, because as I was reading everything, a lot of the questions that I came up with, like in terms of how do we pick who will get money and how much, and do we wait until we have all of the applications? Like, do we give a deadline and say you have to apply by a certain deadline, and then we determine based on that how we allocate? Or do we start allocating on a first come first served basis? Because then some people who may not know about it may get left out, and then I start thinking,
wait. That's part of what this committee was formed to do, for us to decide those things. Because until we decide, as far as I know, there's not any specific guidance from the state on how we have to do that. Now, if it changes, we'll see, but, and we can't wait until we get guidance. So
Well,
I think that's one of the things that this committee does, is determine how we want to go about this, what deadlines. I think, yes, I think we have to have a deadline, but you know, when they're all in. But that's part of what this committee will decide, how we go about that.
Well, in looking at Wichita's or Sedgwick County, I printed off their stuff and I've looked at their video more than once. It says they have government assistant programs, public health assistant program, social service assistant program, educational, and other. Are those categories they created, or are those the categories that is set up?
I don't know.
Because I do like the categories, and for me, I was thinking along the lines of, we do some type of public announcement. I mean, set up the system isn't. I believe we ask them to we make a public announcement that we have this. We publish this on our website, like they've done. I think there's no reason to reinvent the wheel. I think what Sedgwick County's done is really well. And we say that we have these 5 categories, and that if
Brian,
you have a need, huh?
Brian, can you hold on just a second? I understand ASEM got on the federal website. Can you give us some help from that?
So their CARES Act on their website.
Can you hear him?
A little bit.
The federal government's CARE Act website, it has funding allocations for state, local governments, and tribal areas. And I do have those links. I can forward those to you.
Good.
And from there, they have a PDF file where what I found to be most relevant to what we are trying to do. And it appears Sedgwick County has followed those guidelines.
So there are those categories?
Yes.
That's where that
Okay.
came
So
from.
there are broadly 4 categories out there, and the 5th one is catch-all type of deal,
Okay.
where if you've missed something and you think that you should get this money, then go ahead and fill out this form. And on each one of those forms, they have on the bottom of the application, they have 2 sections for what you have already spent
Right.
versus what you anticipate spending till December
Right.
30th.
Yeah,
So-
that's on Wichita's. Yeah.
Right.
So it looks like Sedgwick got their guidance from the federal source from the same website, because their breakdowns very closely match what was up there on that. So I think we'd be in good shape.
Categories are what's ineligible. It's very clear on their website what it can be applied for. And I was thinking more along the line of that, if this is, we publicize it, but if this is important to you, you submit your application or your need application or request, whatever we want to call it, by a deadline. This committee reviews those, and then we decide from there. I mean, we may get overwhelmingly more requests in one category than the other. And I would think maybe that's where more money needs to go, if there's more money in one category than others. But I think that's the way I looked at them doing the needs assessment was, if we're going to do a needs assessment based off your application, I think what you're saying, Betty, is the same thing.
Yes.
We get there, we set up the application, we look at what Sedgwick County did, we have that, we say we can do it in an administrative of communications, or have the media, Commissioner Rippon, or whoever wants to do something on a media, some type of media, or I think they did their fiscal officer, which I guess would be you, Betty, in our jurisdiction, to say and walk through that. we get those. And if it's, I would say that you've got all the month of July. I mean, I would be more inclined to think that by August 1st, you have to have your request to us by August 1st.
Okay, Brian, can we step back and take it one step at a time?
Yeah.
I agree with everything you're saying,
Mm-hmm.
but I'd like to take it like one step at a time.
Sure.
First of all, I looked at that on Sedgwick County. I thought it looked like a real good way for us to go. I think it's probably the easiest, but this to me is a decision the committee should make, not just something that I decided. I think, if other people have other ideas on how we should collect this information, I felt like by having it on our website and have specific fields they have to fill out, it's going to be easier for us to compare those and to understand, what the need is and why. But I guess my first question though is that the way we want to go on this? Or is that, do other people have different ideas?
Did we see how Johnson County did it? Because they received their funds earlier as well, right?
Yes, the last thing I saw was it was minutes from their meeting, June something. And it just said that they would be coming back to them with a plan or with a proposal on how to do it. And well, I couldn't find any information on what Johnson County's doing.
Sedgwick County had theirs posted June 5th.
Mm-hmm.
And based on the videos that you're talking
Got to talk up.
They had these assessments when they first posted that. Within a couple of days, they got 15 to 18 applicants.
Who is this? Johnson County?
Yes, Sedgwick County.
Sedgwick. Okay. Okay.
So, and then when they posted this on June 5th, from then they gave public 2-week notice, which is going to end on June 19th. And then they've been running the news advertisement, and then they have a whole section dedicated to this NOFO deal, which is Notice of Funding Opportunity, on their website.
Okay, so let's stick with it. Do I need to take a vote if we want to do some type of a survey on our website to gather the information or something? Or does anybody else have another idea?
My suggestion would be that we do everything online, do similar to what Sedgwick County did, where they have it set out with categories and explain, and then you can click the link and they fill in the information and submit it. But in our situation, since we don't really have as much time, that we say that this is an application versus a needs assessment that has to be evaluated and or approved, it doesn't automatically mean that they get the funding. But I think that doing it online in this day and age we have to do it that way. And then be able to do press releases and, get the news people involved and get it out there.
One thing at a time. One thing at a time. Okay.
So did they call this a grant application? Is that what how'd Sedgwick do it?
They called it a notice of funding opportunity.
Notice of funding.
Notice of funding opportunity. Yeah. Yeah. So, okay. So is there anyone that's against us using an online process?
Betty, this is Edith. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So are we still talking about doing the assessment as a part of the application, like one step and not two separate steps?
Yes, that's what we were.
Okay.
Yeah, I just don't think, I think we can do them together, and I don't think we want to spend the time having one deadline for a needs assessment, and then they'd have to come back with a proposal or, so that's, yes, I am proposing that it's all in one.
Yeah, well, I would be in agreement with that.
Okay. Okay, so we will do online. We can talk later about the details, but okay, if we're going to do it online, the second part to me, and kind of was already brought up, is how do we get the word out? I mean, we're going to have to get the word out to the school districts, the cities, the hospitals, the clinics, the,
Did we get a PIO?
I would probably start out with not just the media, and of course talking about it in the commission meetings as to what progress may have been made, but also through our some of our email addresses that we send out just regular information on, whether it be hazardous weather, whether it be media releases, anything like that. There are literally several hundred people and organizations on those email lists, and we can send those out to different people and then ask that they distribute that as they see necessary from the EOC.
And the health department has a pretty good Facebook account that's really active.
yeah. And I also wondered if maybe contacting like associations, like the school district association or the,
Contact the public information officer from the school district.
yeah.
I
But-
think that those are good ideas. There's also formats like Nextdoor,
Yeah,
Facebook with the emergency management,
Yeah.
The news. And I think sending letters, if there's, I mean, the unfortunate thing is that with letters, we could pick and choose certain organizations, but then all of a sudden, what if we're leaving anybody out? But I think like contacting the schools directly would be a good idea. And
I'm on an intergovernmental committee, and it has all the school superintendents. It has the library. They're represented on there, and Washburn University, and it's all one big batch file.
that would be great.
And that would
We
get
could
it out.
use that,
That would hit
yes.
all the schools, library, and
Social services?
not a lot of social services, but those
Yeah.
anyway.
And that's an email
Yeah,
group?
sure.
Oh, that would be good.
like listservs of any.
Yeah,
That's Betty.
yeah.
This is Larry Ma.
Mhm.
If you go out and you contact every individual school, you're going to get all kinds of requests. When you have things like schools that have school districts, wouldn't it be better on our part if we said, if it's school consolidated with your school district, let the school district make the request for the school district rather than having individual schools asking for their needs?
Yes, I absolutely agree. It would be the district that would be making the request. And within their
And
request, they might have different things in it.
Right. I mean, the schools need to be told, but the school district has the obligation to go gather that information, consolidate it, and distribute their portion according to as they see it for the district. And if there are other organizations that we can do that for our sake, have them consolidate their needs rather than having all their individual members come in and bombard us with individual requests.
Yeah, I agree.
School districts come to mind, but there may be others, that I'm not aware of.
Well, if you look at
Is
second counties, they have that. That's what they put in their eligible applicants. Like for government, it's cities. If it's public, if it's schools or education, it says school districts. And I
Ryan,
think,
you and I are doing the exact same thinking here because I just was going to say the same thing.
Yeah.
It's set out in Sedgwick County is exactly how.
yeah,
Yeah.
they
What about
put it
little fire stations? I could see them having.
Well, aren't they under the city?
Well, no, not exactly.
Well, I think you have the city fire department, then you have the individual volunteer fire departments.
Right.
Do they fall under the township commissioner?
Yeah, I think they are under the township.
Well, I think-
So maybe you say, okay, the township, the stuff that's under you consolidate it, and we put the burden on the township to know where their needs are the greatest, rather than if we have 1,000 different entities, that's going to be tough on us to decide who's more important. But if we can consolidate those into people like the township, they've been elected to look after the best interests of the township, and that includes the fire district. Let them make their application, and then what they get, they can distribute amongst themselves. That would be my opinion.
I agree.
Or-
I agree.
We don't want too
Like in
many.
comparison to Sedgwick County, they just say cities located, but they may not have townships or other taxing districts. And so we may need to specify ours a little more in detail.
Yeah, we could, and I was gonna say the same thing, we could add townships, cities and townships.
Okay, so,
Betty,
yeah,
on Sedgwick's website, when they have this entity type in there.
Yeah.
And when you are selecting city, you're listing only the cities, not the townships in there.
Drop down list lists only the cities.
okay.
So,
We're proposing adding cities and townships, so we'd have to list all of the townships
I
and
think
all of the
so.
cities.
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Betty, do you want to send this to the finance people for all of these entities?
Well, that's just it. I don't know who our contact is. That's why I'm asking. You would
To me,
have
it
that
seems
information.
The most logical approach is just like they're assuming that you, as our finance person, you're in charge of that. I have every one of the all 49 entities in Shawnee County. I have every one of those on email, and it's the finance person for every one of them.
Great.
And
Great.
and also, are we going to use all 9 school districts that we pay pay taxes in Shawnee County? Or are we only going to use the ones that are considered, we have 9 school districts.
I think we hit them all.
Okay, because we can send you we can get the email addresses for everybody.
Yeah, I think that we don't want to eliminate people until applications start coming in, is what I would think.
Yeah. Now I think we can specify that we want them to consolidate, like one school district just sends one,
Right, because you got like Rossville is in Potawatomi and Shawnee County, so they have so they're smaller school districts, but they have, and some of them obviously some are in multiple counties, so they'd have to figure out they couldn't apply to all the counties they're in. Possibly,
Well,
I don't know. Maybe they're.
That's a good point to notate for us to talk about once we get through this, because we would want to make sure that we clarify that they can only submit expenses incurred in Shawnee County.
And also, they will have to acknowledge that they are not, that they'll have to acknowledge that this money or this expense is not being paid out of any other federal grant money or federal money. So they will already they will have to declare that.
Okay.
Hey, Betty, this is Edith. I'm just letting you know I have to get off the call now, but I know you'll catch me up if I miss something.
Yeah.
All right. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye. Okay. Asim had something here.
I was saying that in the budget section of Sedgwick County's application, they do ask a specific question that what is going to be spent for, and then if they have been getting any other funding from any other resources.
Yeah, that's a federal rule. You can't get a reimbursement from more than one source.
Right. So I mean, based on these questions, as we're collecting them, we can read out the application from the system side and then only bring you the ones that are more eligible.
Good.
What about city? I mean, they're going to have some big ones. They got fire, police, and whatnot. Should those be separate applications, or should they just city of Topeka and that's it?
I think it's one application where they list several different types of expenses or projects. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I would agree. I mean, I keep going back to Sedgwick County's deal, and what I like about it is it has the list of eligible applicants. So when we talk about how to get the information out, if it's the cities, well, I think it should be the city finance person, like Cindy says. If you look at the eligible deals for health, it says nonprofit hospitals or clinics, nonprofit hospital clinics with the community benefit. It clearly states, I mean, the way they've done it, who they've contacted. So we just would I think that we look at who the eligible applicants are and we build our email contact list off that, and then we send them out. But
also think what Asim was talking about, some of this we can vet out in the process, because they'll have a question that asks them, I don't know, something. They will have to be able to answer that question, and if they can't answer it in the correct manner, then their application doesn't go forward. So that will help vet out some of them that are not eligible too.
Yeah, as far if for example, for the city of Topeka, I think it's either the city finance person or it's the city manager that submits the request for the whole thing.
Right.
And that's it.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't want every department.
Yeah, and for the school district,
and, you know,
whoever
and
the
then we
school-
can
Go ahead.
then we can look at it, and there may be some things we want to fund and others we don't. You know, as we
Yeah.
prioritize things, we might fund some of it and not all of it.
Well, I guess I go back to somebody had made the question. Let's say 501 school district for some reason asked for $100,000, and we and they, let's say they have 5 requests in there for $20,000 a piece. We like 4 of them, $80,000 of it, but we don't like one of them. Are we suggesting that we would say we'll give you $80,000 for only these purposes? Or I thought somebody mentioned we would say we would give 501 that you guys decide how much it goes out to everybody in your district.
I think it's an organizational
Brian?
decision.
Yes.
Brian, I think you give them the 80,000, and if they want to distribute it however they do, that is their governing board, and
I agree.
they're responsible for all of the members.
Correct.
You know,
That's
I
what
don't really want to be in. I really don't want to be in a position where I tell the fire department, you can have this amount of money, but Topeka Police, I'm giving you this amount. That's not my call. We're not in a position to make that call. The city
I agree.
and the city manager are in that position, as well as school district.
Yeah, I think we
So they
decide.
can ask for whatever they want, and then they'll get that amount, and then I'll let them make those hard decisions on individuals. Because I don't think anybody on this committee is in a position to make that decision.
But we have to make sure they're all eligible expenses they would be spending it on.
That brings
Yes,
up-
and they would have to detail where's this money going to go, and if we saw some things in there that didn't jive, we'd throw those out.
Yeah.
But once they get their pot of money, you know, that's up to them to follow the guidelines and distribute it as they see best, because they're sitting on top of it.
So will the feds
That
come
would be
back
my
later and
opinion.
They can.
audit this and say, okay, we're going to bring this money back because we don't
The
like the way you
feds,
spend it,
the feds could come in and audit it.
Yes.
Now,
which they
the
will.
practical
So
sense, I
there's-
don't know, but they could.
There's a position called the Inspector General of Treasury. And that position is responsible for the receipt, disbursement, and use of the funds. And it says that they will go back and recover payments that are received in violation. So if someone misapplies and gets money for it, it can be overseen by the federal government, and they'll take that money back.
Okay, with that, Joni, where does our liability stand once, say, we give money to 501 misappropriates it?
I don't know yet, and that's one of the questions that I have based on what kind of guidance we get from the state. And I've been trying to look for the CARES Act and see how they've detailed what liability there would be, because that's my concern, is that we're being put into a huge position to make these decisions. And then what happens if one entity doesn't get money or another does? Like, what happens if we end up, giving money to somebody and they misuse it? What is our liability as the disperser? And honestly, we need more research on that. I don't have an answer right now.
Now I can give you if you say that if the committee were to decide that the entities, the actual taxing entities in Shawnee County are going to get a third of the money of our $36 million, I can give you a mathematical computation that you can come up to that based on their values, so you'd know exactly that. Give that to them, and then there would be you wouldn't even have to base it on anything other than this is what you'd have something to actually look at and say they got that money based on this number and what the request was, and then let it be on their hand. But I don't know if we can do that. I mean, I don't know if that's the kind of thing you can do. Now, hospitals and nursing homes and stuff like that, that amount is going to be, I think we're going to be overwhelmed with requests from them. Obviously all the governmental entities have their own, we are witness to that. We've had a lot of struggles there, but we know where they stand. We don't know, we don't know what the hospitals and the nursing homes and what they have to deal with. So could have thousands of applications or proposals to look at. That's a lot in this short a period of time.
I know it. It is. And another thing, I think we're going to have some type of either it's some type of a document that they sign, whether they have to do a resolution or something that specifies that they will follow the guidelines for the expenditures. I think we need something that puts them on the hook, that says they agree to spend it on, only eligible costs or something.
I'd put that on the application. When they submit the application, I'd put that as the disclaimer or something on the application that says that you're submitting this with the full intent or whatever to stay within the guidelines or to pay it, whatever. So it comes right in at the very beginning.
Well, and I think to that effect, it's very clear from the federal websites that there are three things that we have to look at. Was it a necessary expenditure due to this public health emergency? It wasn't accounted for already within the budget, and it was incurred between the correct dates. And so we're not looking at revenue shortfalls, because we could have all kinds of applications for that. But here I can see more like we had to pay someone to stand at our front door to screen people, or we had to pay for PPE. So they're going to have to be able to prove that they spent these expenditures and this is the dollar amount they lost because of it.
Correct.
How much time are you intending to allow for these entities?
That's a good question. How much time do we give them to, apply this? We've got to be able, before we can do that, we've got to be able to put together some type of an information, and maybe it's on the website or something, but some information for them to know what is eligible. And then I don't know, after we contact them, I don't know how much time we give them, but I think we need a deadline.
What's a timeline for being able to get some sort of website up and ready to go?
It depends. If we just do,
Can you hear Pat?
Yep.
we just do a copy basically of what Sedgwick has done, we could have it done within about 10 days?
At maximum.
Okay, within about 10 days. But part of what keeps me guessing is we have not yet received the guidance from the state of Kansas. If that's wildly different from what has been set up in Sedgwick, then the picture changes.
Right.
If the guidance comes down and it follows closely what's already been established on Sedgwick, probably 10 days. We can have this stood up and running. So that puts us out to, where are we at now? We're at the
18. I mean,
That'd be July 2nd.
yeah, we'd be looking around the first part of July. Would be 14.
Pat,
Yeah.
Pat, this is Larry Moore. Are you talking about 10 days to have the application online?
Yeah.
Yes,
Is that what,
it would be available
Okay,
through the
but
Shawnee County website as a portal.
I don't think we have to wait till the application's online. I think can't we get the guidelines out quickly, less than 10 days, with the promise that the application form will be provided on a date in the future. That gives them time to accumulate all the information they need, and then they can fill out their form. So we can get a quicker start on this.
Yes,
Yeah.
we can do that. We can have an informational page up on our website within a day or two of us receiving the information that we want to distribute.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
we can do that real quickly.
Yeah, I agree. We can go ahead and send out the information. They can start working on it. and then just have maybe a July 1 date that the website that would be available.
Who's our point
So
person?
would you just want to email them then? Send emails out?
Yeah, I think so. I think we want to use pretty much any and all means we have.
Well, I
Okay.
think you ought to post, if you look at what Sedgwick County does, we don't have to, where it's not ready to click on it, but if you have the table of contents and all the information, I mean, they just have it here. It's 8 pages of information. If it's on our website, and then we have the document we can email out, I agree that on the website or whatever, how it's going to be delivered, it can say that applications will begin to be accepted on July 1st or July 2nd, but this gives them the next week and a half, 2 weeks to.
Well, and we can have a link on the email that takes them there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, and you can post all the information. They can look at everything on there. Like again, what Sedgwick County has, it's very clear what they have. Anybody can get on there and read that this is what it's for. And but we've asked about 1,000 questions. I guarantee somebody well, I guess the question is that every committee number, everybody going to have their phone number that's going to start answering questions? I mean, what happens?
No, we're giving them yours, Brian. Just yours.
Yeah, well, they won't get a good answer probably. So I'll say read the website. But there's going to be, if there's these questions we're asking, they're going to have it.
Right.
And
I think we need to set a point person that they will contact. And I don't know exactly who that might be. I could potentially pull Andrea off the internal audit and have her do that.
I think it could be somebody in the financial world.
Betty?
I was thinking, you're talking about, only the organization. I was thinking we could put on somewhere there that we only would accept one application per FEIN. What do you think about that? That's as a way to distinguish who, how they bundle it up together.
Would that consolidate it enough? Like, is it possible that a school district or whatever might have multiple EIN?
I think they do. I know 501 does.
Oh, I thought they
Yeah,
probably
I
only
think-
one. Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
No, I actually, Betty, I think that's a good idea, but that would only apply to those that aren't members of an association or a school district or a city, that don't have those individual entities. If you're talking about individuals that are just coming out on their own, yes, maybe that's the way to screen those out so that you don't get multiples. I don't know, some business guy's got 14 different locations. He submits 14 applications for each location. That's not reasonable.
Right.
So I think your suggestion's right, but that doesn't exclude consolidating the school districts and the cities and the townships and their entities that they have authority over.
But I mean, besides the health field and the governmental entities, what other people are eligible?
Social services, like all kinds of nonprofits and
Not-for-profit hospitals, clinics.
I think even
Right. So we're looking in the health field, whether it's regular health or mental health, the taxing entities, and are there businesses going to be in on this or not?
I've seen two different things, so I'm not certain. I think it says businesses, but but there again, I'm going to have to look at the guidance because one place kind of infers yes and another place infers no. So
Because that's going to make a big difference on. I mean, that's gigantic if it's businesses.
Cindy?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So
Asim had something here.
Based on Sedgwick County's website, they do list the other services, and within other services, they have for-profit businesses as well in there. In my mind, any entity who is eligible, who has then provided the protective measurements of any sort, will be eligible to collect this money.
Okay,
It opens it up.
that opens the way up. That means,
Everybody,
That means lots of applications.
yes,
vicinity out there.
yeah. Okay, so did you hear that?
Yes, I did.
So I wonder the state guidance, I mean, I know we keep coming back to that, but I wonder if they may give us a little direction, because I think it would be really difficult if any business, restaurant, bar, whatever, could come in and apply for this funding. We're not going to have enough money to
Yeah.
hand out.
Well, I know it. And also there's there's other CARES Act monies that were used for small businesses or for things
Right,
like
the PPP loans and, yep.
This may be the part. This may be the part Terry Roberts is talking about, where she says this is would be an awful thing to do, and I think I'm quitting the committee right now because this just oh wow.
Yeah,
Well,
this is gonna be a daunting task. This is yeah.
Betty, this is Larry Maw.
Yeah.
It could be that when we're just looking at the various entities like the school districts, the city and the county and the townships, that's all the money we have. And I don't know how the committee feels about it, but if you have to choose between private individuals versus public, it would seem as our first priority is the public because they serve the public as a whole, everybody, versus a private. And, our problem could be solved in that there's not enough money to cover the public, let alone starting to add private in there. That doesn't mean that the private can't make application, but I have a feeling when we get it all together, we're going to look at the public part of it, and that's probably going to suck most of the money out of the pot.
Well, I see it as after we get the applications in, then the committee comes up with those criteria that they require, and then we would have a priority. Like you said, maybe government is a higher priority than a small business or something like that. That based on that they might have other avenues of federal money.
I would be interested in hearing the thoughts of the other committee members. I think that's true, that it ought to be government and public entities at first, and then if there's that much money left over, we can start worrying about individual businesses. But I'd like to hear from the other committee members.
But don't forget, we've got to throw the health field in this, and that's going to take a big bite too. I mean, that's, and we would probably do well to have all of these priorities set before applications start hitting our doorstep, because otherwise we could all be accused of, well, yeah, you started looking at them and then you made your rules.
Yeah, I agree.
So
I think though, like the saving part of that is that those categories that Sedgwick County listed out, you had indicated came directly from the federal website. And so general businesses aren't one of those main categories. And so I think that we focus on the first categories first, and then the other, if we have extra money, because like you said, Betty, there were other avenues for those businesses to obtain funding, and their employees through unemployment. Like there's lots of other funding that wasn't available to the bigger governmental health agencies and such. That's what this money was for. So I think that we stick with the main categories, and then if there's stuff left over, instead of having to send the money back and we are able to help some other businesses, then we look at that.
My guess is we won't have to worry about sending it back.
I know.
I agree.
If you look what's on Sedgwick counties, in each area, it specifically says who's eligible. In government, it's cities. In health, for health, it says nonprofit hospitals or clinics, for-profit health clinics, non or for-profit. I mean, it lists who the deals. If the question is, we need to prioritize how we're going to do it. I think we ought to reach out to Sedgwick County to see what they're doing. I mean, I don't see anything on there that says that they're going to prioritize public versus private. I'm not suggesting that. I agree with what Larry is saying.
I don't think we would put that on our website. I don't think we are going to put on our website how we are going to evaluate it and what criteria we're using. I think
I was mentioning what Cindy said is that if there's nothing transparent about it, then who's to say somebody comes in and says, well, you got our applicants, but how come we didn't get anything as well? And then somebody's going to be the spokesman. And I don't want to put the commissioner on there. Well, the committee decided we went for public instead of private. Well, then why didn't you tell us or we didn't know that ahead of time or whatever. But,
well, Brian, in the overview for the state Spark, there's actually 3 rounds to this. We're in the first round. The first round clearly states it's local governments. And then the second round is public/private entities, and that's going to be in August. And in October, it's public versus private entities. So the private part of it is coming later. But the one thing I know when you look at their website, it says first round, local governments. So I think that's our first focus.
So what Sedgwick County put out was Sedgwick Cares notice for funding, and they're putting out in round 1 that says eligible is cities, nonprofit organizations. They're putting stuff out for all 3 rounds. Is that what
Well, but they got their money directly. They got their money directly. So we're doing it different because we're getting it from the state, and they got theirs directly from the federal government.
Well, I understand that, but they still are following whether they got it directly. Don't they follow phase 1 first too?
Well, no, actually, no. What I'm reading from is what the Sparks committee that the governor put together, which just recently put out their guidelines and distributed this $400 million. And they say round 1. So I don't think Sedgwick County and Johnson County had the benefit of looking at this when they made their plans, is what I would think. But it looks pretty clear to me that they're focusing on local governments. If we get so lucky as all of our local governments' needs are taken care of and we have extra money, it would behoove us to look further than that. But it's clear that in August, they're going to distribute another 310 to 525 million to public/private entities. And then there's another 109 to 324 million coming in October for public and private entities. And so I think they thought that through a little bit when they were going through that. It looks like to me.
Well, is it possible that Johnson and Sedgwick got all their money at one time? They're not going to have any other 2 phases, or are they getting more money as well?
Well, they did get some of that 50 million, that impact fund. They
right.
did get some of that. And then also the way I understand it, phase 2 or round 2 and round 3 will both be controlled by the state. That doesn't mean it won't benefit counties, but that will be something that the state is doing and more on a statewide basis. I listened to the Spark task force. It was their executive and their steering committees. And I listened to that meeting, and they were brainstorming on what they would do for rounds 2. And well, mainly just round 2. And they were looking at broadband. They were looking at educational things, e-learning kind of projects. They were looking more at big statewide projects for that. That was at least the discussion. So I think they will control rounds 2 and 3, and we won't get any money from that. That doesn't mean there might not be something in Johnson County or Sedgwick County that they do.
Okay, so then that takes me back to if they're looking at supporting health and broadband and other stuff, do we then, like, that kind of takes us back to step 1. Do we include health in ours? Because now I start to question, and I thought about this as I was looking through, because Sedgwick and Johnson County got their money directly, and probably aren't under the guidelines of what the rest of us have to do directly from the state. They may be distributing their money to everybody. Are we really doing everybody right off the top, or are we focusing, like Larry said, just on the local governments? Because then what the state does in phase 2 and phase 3 would cover some of those other entities.
Look over here on the.
I think you're right, Johnny. I think you calculate it out, they've got almost $250 million in between. They have almost $250 million between Sedgwick and Johnson County, straight from the federal government. So maybe that's all they're going to get. And the rest of it, we got $300,000 for our first phase, and that's for the counties. The rest of the counties were left, and maybe that's it. I just wish the state somebody would give us some rules. It'd certainly make our lives easier.
Okay, Sam, why don't you go ahead?
So looking at the eligibility criteria that Sedgwick County has come up with, and the sections, they are listed. So I'm looking at the social services. They are saying that for the social services, any of the eligible costs are the social support initiatives, protective measures, costs associated with modifying the delivery of services.
Now, where's this from?
This is on the last page.
The federal or
Sedgwick.
which Sedgwick? Okay.
Right, and Sedgwick got theirs from feds.
Yeah.
So any of for example, if you take a look at this K-12 for the schools, and if they have this broadband initiative, for those type of initiatives, they will go to round 2 for their money.
Right.
But anything that they've done in regards to taking care of these items for K-12, it is, if you look at this thing, so mostly they're concerned about any of the protective measures that people have taken and costs associated with modifying methods of teaching or providing services. Those are the only eligible criteria that we have to worry about.
So within each category,
Right.
there's a list of eligible costs within that category, like whether it's education or whether it's city or whatever. There are eligibility requirements within each category.
But where did that come from?
What?
That you were mentioning?
From Sedgwick counties.
Who got it?
But what I'm trying to say is Sedgwick County set it up nicely, but did they set it up because they got one big chunk of money and that's what they're getting? We got a portion of a chunk of the money that's supposed to be phase 1. Maybe we don't need to go into as big of a disbursement as Sedgwick County is, because we are only supposed to be responsible for dispersing funds to certain organizations right now. And until we have the guidance from the state, I feel like we don't really know that.
We could go back to what Brian was talking about earlier and just, instead of trying to reinvent what's been going on or what the website's about or how they made their decisions or anything else, who can we contact in Sedgwick County and just have a real quick conversation with them and say, hey, what did you take into consideration when you put all this together? Did you get this in a lump sum? If you're willing to share that, what drove your decisions as to how you're doing this and why you're doing it?
It sounds like to me, Larry is probably correct, is that, or everybody said that they got one lump sum money. They're not going through the state requirements of local governments, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. So I think there's a little bit more broad. And if the phase 1 says to local governments, then I'm going to guess then that drastically reduces the categories that we have, because that ain't going to be right. You have public health, but that ain't government health. Social services, if it's local governments, I take that as governments and schools only. I may be wrong.
Brian, are you still referring to the categories that Sedgwick had? Is that where you're getting your?
They have 5 categories. They have
right,
5.
but their
Huh?
5 categories could be a consolidation of our phases that we're in. See, they don't have to be.
That's what
They don't. I think they don't have to do phases. So they
That's
can
what
do that. They can do that 5 categories, but ours may not be that way at all. And yeah, I don't think
That's what I'm
I don't think.
I'm thinking because they got their money from the feds, they don't have to go through that. They can have the 5 categories. If I was hearing Larry right, and I haven't looked at the government stuff, if it is local governments, then that drastically reduces the categories we have, which would be government assistant programs. They listed all the programs that are listed on the federal deal. Now, if we're saying the state categories are different, then I'll go back to Joni's question is then it doesn't sound like anybody here knows what local government, what that means. I mean, we went from the very, I mean, I don't know what, if it says to local governments, well, that doesn't mean nonprofit hospital to me.
Larry, where did you see that phase 1 stuff at? I've been looking on the governor's website and I can't find it. And I feel like I've seen the breakdown of the phases, but I don't know.
Joni, if you go to the state's COVID-19 website, and if you look at the presentations, I think this one was for, the one that I had that I used this morning was from the presentation to the State Finance Council. Trying to think
the other day.
Tuesday or 16th, or I think it was on the 16th. And that has those.
Yeah,
in
Betty,
there.
I was referring, that's the presentation you looked at. It starts out with the sunflowers, then lists all the committee members, and then eventually gets to phase round 1, 2, and 3. That's where I'm looking at. And I, you know, and again, I go back to, I think once we collect all of the governmental entities, we should have the best nightmare in the world that we would have money left over. You know, we can only hope for that. But until we've covered all of the governmental entities that are valid, I don't think we should be getting into the business of picking private businesses, profit or nonprofit, because now we're putting ourselves into a position of picking winners and losers at the private level, and that's a very awkward position to be in. So I say we focus on governmental entities, public entities first, and then if we get so lucky as to have money left over, we can look at something else. That doesn't mean that we wouldn't accept those applications and put them off to the side, so that if we get lucky, we don't have to wait another 3 weeks for them to collect their information. It's in there. We can go look at that pot. But I just push it off to the side and take care of business first, and then get into that business of picking winners and losers on the private side. That's my personal opinion.
And I agree with you, Larry. The only thing that I probably am confused about is that if the state plan says local governments, why would we even allow the nonprofits to put in an application?
We wouldn't. We wouldn't.
So my point is I don't know what we would be laying off to the side if we're so lucky to have any monies left to consider them. I don't think we should allow them to put in at all. So I don't know that there should be an application for a nonprofit to be setting off to the side. I think we got the governments and we put the money. Now, if there's any money left over, well, I mean, if the rule is from the governor or the state is it goes to local government, then that's all we get our applications for. And if it's not for the whole amount, then I don't want this to sound greedy, that if we take care of all the other government and if there's any, and we take care of Shawnee County, if there's anything left over, it goes back to Shawnee County. I mean,
I feel like my idea better. Let's just do it mathematically. I mean, we can, because they're going to be responsible for how they're spending their money. Why do we have to make a decision on the front end?
I don't think we can do that, Cindy, because we have to know that they have enough expenses to spend this on.
Okay.
I don't think we just give them a lump sum, because then what if they don't have enough costs to spend it?
The only thing that's confusing is that on that presentation, towards the end of it, it says that counties will be encouraged to share their funds with cities,
Right.
school districts, local businesses.
That's
So
right.
why are local businesses then lumped in? Because if you look at the, I'm gonna move my thing here because I keep staring off to the other side. If you look at that, it says counties will be encouraged to share with them, but above that, it says counties will be provided with flexibility for direct aid and reimbursements. It could include PPE testing, contact tracers, quarantine resources, payroll, public health costs. I mean, and above it does say local government.
Well, but then they turn around in the same breath and say that we can't be reimbursed for budgeted expenses. Well, what do they think our payroll is?
Well, that would be if you hired somebody just for this.
Yeah, it'd be above and beyond what was budgeted.
And overtime too. If you hired somebody just for this, or if there was overtime and that overtime was because of COVID.
Or
Okay.
like say, for instance, someone was doing a job that they normally wouldn't have been doing, and so they weren't doing the job that they should have been doing.
Okay.
I think maybe you would have reason to argue there.
Okay.
Betty, this is Larry Ma. I reached out to Tom Hawks, who was on the SPART committee, and he's at a funeral right now, but he promised to call me back this afternoon after 3 o'clock. I will pose this question to him and get his thoughts, since he was on the committee, and give this committee some feedback on that discussion, if that's okay with you.
Good.
Can you
Yeah, that'd be
also
great.
find out when they might have guidance? See what they.
Yeah, I will talk to him. He's supposed to call me. He's burying his aunt or somebody who died from COVID-19.
Well, and
No,
also, you wouldn't
Betty, I
mind
have
if
a
you,
question for you. When did you say we were actually going to be getting these funds?
the last I saw, this is just on these slides, it said distribution was July 13th.
Okay, now, between, July 13th to the time we've got till when to distribute this?
October.
Is that
October.
October 1st?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Betty, you're the finance person. What kind of interest can you get on $36 million in
Well,
2-3
6 months
months?
ago, it would have been quite a bit. Right now, not a lot.
About
But we
0%.
36 million, still 36 million. And do they take that into consideration? Do we have to take the interest in, because we're not going to put it in a checking account that's not interest bearing.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing anything mentioned about.
Well, of course they wouldn't.
Yeah, but anyway, Larry, if you would ask, if you talk to this committee member, if you would ask him if they are going to have specific guidance, or if the federal guidance is what, if they're just going to push down the federal guidance, that would really help us to know that, because then we can move forward quickly if we know that the state's guidance is not going to be different.
I will do that. Any other questions that somebody would like to have answered? Anybody
Yes,
else have anything else?
I do. I have a question.
Okay.
This 50-50, the 50% reimbursement, the 50% direct aid. What does the direct aid have to be spent on? Is it the, I don't know, they're saying it has to be for these costs, but why is it so much as reimbursement and so much as direct aid? What can the direct aid be spent on?
Yeah, that goes to the question I asked first. I didn't even understand that. So that was one of the reasons I called him, is I couldn't figure that out from their presentation. So that was at the top of my list, actually.
Okay, good.
Anything else that anybody can think of? I'm planning on picking his brains as much as I can to see what thought process they went through and gain some insight from that.
Good. Okay, well, I
If
feel
any,
like,
well, I might say this, if anyone else happens to know, you look at that committee, you happen to know somebody, you have a strong enough personal relationship with them, I would encourage you to call them like I called Tom and just have a conversation and get their side of it, because there were numerous people on that committee. Tom may have his take on it, somebody else may have another take, but if we can kind of consolidate all that, I would not propose that Tom knows everything and is going to be the last word on that, but at least I'll have his insight, having sat in the committee. If you know somebody on this committee and you're close enough to them that you feel like you can give them a call and just have a personal conversation, I would recommend that you do that and then share it with the rest of us.
yep, I agree. Okay, I think we pretty much have come to a consensus right now that we want to move forward on the online application process and we're asking IT to do that, to move forward in a similar manner as Sedgwick right now, because we do know at least Sedgwick follows the federal guidelines. With the idea of that being up and running on July 1, are we all in agreement on that?
But
Sure.
before that, put in some kind of a information page.
And yes.
So where's the text for that?
And the information page that we're going to put on the website before that, we'll have to find exactly where we can get that information.
We're gonna have to wait for the guidelines, aren't we?
And that's really where it would come from the state.
So we're kind of
at mercy.
no, we are.
Yeah.
I don't know
Yeah.
when we can get that out.
Unless we hear that it's just federal guidelines, and then we could go from federal,
Sure.
but we don't know that yet.
I would have a hard time believing that it'll just be the federal, since they're doing it in phases. It seems like they specifically wanted to break it down into categories so that certain funds would be focused in one area and then other funds would be focused in other areas. So hopefully hopefully Larry can get some more information.
That would be helpful for us to share that.
And I'll do some more searching through the legislation. I wasn't able to determine whether when the legislature was together on June 3, whether their bill included anything that dictates these funds, or if it's all just coming from the Spark committee. I also wanted
The state finance council had to approve the 400 million being sent out, and that's what they did on whatever day that was, Tuesday or whenever.
Yeah.
And they had to approve the plan and the 400 million distribution.
Okay, so if there may be some minutes from that we could look at too. And then I want to look a little bit more at the liability part of it.
I'm sorry, what?
I also want to look a little bit more at the liability part of it, for like our own liability to the distributions and what happens if people misappropriate the funds, or if we choose not to give money to one entity versus another, things like that.
And if there's any language that you want in the application that they have to mark, that they understand that they will comply with such and such, can you send that to Asim if there's something included in there?
Larry, did Sedgwick County send out did they have people fill out applications? Is that the way they did it?
I don't think they have yet.
Or are they going to?
Yeah.
Do they have an application made yet? I was just looking for.
I haven't talked to anybody in Sedgwick. I haven't talked to anyone in Sedgwick County, but looking at their website and what they did, I think that's exactly, they took applications. Whether they've actually processed those yet or not, I don't know.
I was looking for a copy, something we could copy, or at least have a template or some sort.
Well, what's on Sedgwick County is more of a
We have
needs
that?
assessment,
Okay.
unless I don't know that they have gone from the needs assessment to the application.
We have it. You say we have a template for that.
Right.
Okay.
For what?
For what Sedgwick County
Oh,
did.
okay.
Yeah, but it's
Okay.
it's not an application, it's just an assessment.
Yeah, I don't know,
Oh,
and
it's
maybe
a
they
set.
have since then, but
Maybe they
last
have.
I knew, Sedgwick County was just doing a needs assessment And that's what their
As of
online was.
yesterday. I know that. He will also send out a link to all of the members of this group that just shows the breakdown, the analysis that we did on Sedgwick's website. And it's got some links at the top that show you where the information comes from the federal level that people
Okay.
can go to and look at. Just if anybody's got some time to go through that and look at it, you can see it at its source up there. So we'll send that around for everybody and you can take a look at it if you like.
Okay. Okay. What else do we need to discuss today?
Does anybody want these, the emails for these finance people yet, or you want to wait with that? Or do you, I don't, you
Yeah,
want to
that's
wait?
great. Yeah,
Getting
why
our
don't you,
distribution list going.
yeah, why don't you send them to me? I would
Okay,
appreciate that, and I'll,
I'll send you what I have too. on the
good,
list.
and yeah,
We'll-
perfect. Yeah, let's go ahead and start getting those compiled. So when we're ready, we can send out those emails.
right, because then if we don't get at least we'd have the information for them if we can find some information, and then that would give IT the opportunity to get the stuff up and running by July 1st, and all they'd have to do is wait, have their information, and sit back and wait to plug it into our application.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, when do we want to have our next meeting?
Larry's got something.
I'd say no later than about next Tuesday or so.
Yeah, so when, next Tuesday, does that work? Do we want to
For
do
me.
1 o'clock?
Sure.
Do we want to do 1 o'clock again, or is another time better?
1 o'clock works for me.
Yeah, 1 o'clock on the 23rd works for me.
Okay. Sky,
Yeah, that
can you arrange that for us?
Yes, I can. We can also just continue to use this link if we want to.
Good, that'd be
So
great.
if you want to just save this link and use it again, that's fine.
Okay. You know, and I think I had it in my email, but I didn't say it while we were on this meeting. Sky is recording this for us, and then she's putting together notes from it.
Thank you.
I would say that on that little calendar that they have on their presentation, it says notify June 19. So maybe tomorrow they intend to put the guidance out. Or was that the notification of the distributions that they did today?
I don't know.
I don't know. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.